Good morning, everybody. Today we are talking about a very famous novel in the English language, which is Robinson Crusoe. Robinson Crusoe is also very famous among Italian readers because, in particular for children, it is considered one of the most appreciated novels. I think that most of you already know the plot of this story, but today we are also trying to repeat the most important moments of this novel. This novel was written by Daniel Defoe. You know that he is the father of English English novels. So we can say that the novels started to exist, the real novels, the typical novels started to exist in the 18th century. And in fact, this novel was published in 1719. The story is actually set in a previous period because the protagonist, we can say, Robinson, was born in 1632 in New York. So the story is set in we can say a century before the real publication of the story. Also because Daniel Defoe, when he published this novel, he pretended he had found the diary of this man, the manuscript of this man, and he pretended his novel was based on these series of this kind of diary. So it was not an invention. He pretended he pretended us to think. Okay, let's see the plot, which is actually very simple. You see that Robinson Crusoe is the main protagonist of the novel, the only protagonist, because in this novel we find for the majority of the novel we find Robinson as the only protagonist. And in the last part of the novel we find also Friday, but he cannot be considered a real protagonist of the novel. Robinson is, it belongs, you see, it is an adventure novel, of course, and it was written by Daniel Defoe in 1719, as I told you. Who is Robinson? Robinson is a middle-class man, and his family lives in New York, where he was born, and his family is a wealthy middle-class family. So we can say that Robinson represents the standard, the stereotype of English society in this period. The typical example of the Englishman, middle class, male, literate, and self-made man. In fact, his father wanted him to be a lawyer, but he didn't want to because he preferred to travel, and his disobedience will be punished, as we can see in the novel, because he left his family to travel, and during one of his journeys he was shipwrecked. He was shipwrecked on a desert island. Okay. So he travels a lot, and he also buys a plantation in Brazil. While going from Africa to Brazil to take some slaves, his ship is shipwrecked. Is shipwrecked too, but is the only man who survives to the shipwreck, and he arrives on a desert island. You see that after 12, so he stays there, is completely alone because the island is completely desert, and with the help of some parcels he recuperates from the sea, is able to survive. He also built a house on the trees. He tries to reproduce the society he has left in England, also on the island. So from this point of view is really representative of the ideals, idealistic, of the ideal man in this period, because according to these ideal, men had to try to reproduce English society everywhere they went, and they had to be independent, to be able to survive even in tragic or in particular situations. After 12 years in solitude, he finally finds a man. He rescues a man, a savage man, and he calls him Friday, according to the day of the week in which he rescues him. He takes care of this man, he takes Friday with him, and he tries to educate Friday. So he does his best to teach him English, to teach him religion, to teach him writing and reading the Bible in particular. And he tries to transform Friday into a real Englishman. After other 16 years of solitude, together with Friday on the island, he is finally rescued by a ship, an English ship, and he comes back home finally. And when he comes back home, he finds out that his plantation in Brazil has made him extremely rich. Okay, so he comes back home after a very long period, but is still a very wealthy and rich man. And this is a very simple plot. The plot is very linear. In fact, differently from other novels, one of the main characteristics of this novel, of this story, is that it is narrated in chronological order, because basically the diary that Robinson writes on the island in the long period of imprisonment on the island is published by Daniel Defoe. So he takes this diary and he pretends to publish the real diary written by Robinson. And in the diary we find a chronological description day by day of the different adventures or episodes of his life. Let's see something about the two characters, because we said that the two main characters, the most important is Robinson, but we can also accept that Friday is part of the story, is an important part of the story. First of all, I wanted to tell you that the island is a particular choice that made by Daniel Defoe, because he wanted the reader to be concentrated on his characters. So the only way to do that is to put his character, in this case Robinson, on an island. So on the island we have to dedicate our attention to this character, because we have nothing more to listen or to watch at. The island is a kind of stage. Let's talk about the characters. Robinson, as I have already told you, is a middle-class man, because if you remember, in this period the main protagonists of the novels, of these new forms of literature, had to be members of real life, member of contemporary society. So the middle class was a good choice, because most of the people who read novels were middle class people, middle class women in particular. He's also a self-made man, because his family is wealthy, but he doesn't want to be helped by his family, and he gradually starts to make his fortune, because he goes, he travels, he visits a lot of places, he buys plantation in Brazil, and he has this adventure. So we can say that he's a self-made man. Also because on the island he survives thanks to his skills, to his attitudes, because he has to do everything on his own. He doesn't find anything to survive on. So he has to become a bricklayer, we can say, or he has to cultivate the ground. He has to take animals for the milk, and to goats and many other animals. So he's a real self-made man. Is also extremely religious, as in this period was required by the Puritans. So the Puritans forced the writers to dedicate their novels, to include in their novels religious elements. And in this novel they are particularly present. First of all, because Robinson finds out a Bible, okay? He is able to rescue from the sea a Bible, so he can dedicate every day a moment of his life, of his day, of his daily routine to the reading of the Bible, okay? And it is present in the novel, as if the writer wanted to underline that even in this dramatic situation, the character dedicated his thoughts to religion, to God. And he also finds answers in God. And then he's also a very rational and objective man in his approach to reality, because when he arrives on the island, of course he feels at first desperate, but he decides to survive, so he does his best. He tries to use his knowledge, his rationality, his ability to find a way to recreate the basic things to survive. And he also recreates in the end everything that he had, quite everything he had in his country. Is of course a learned man, because he went to school, so is able to read and write, and is also the stereotype of English colonizer. Why is that? Because when he finds, first of all, when he arrives on the island, he tries to change, to transform, to recreate on the island the things, the situation, the context that he had in his country. So he builds a house, he breeds animals, and he, for example, he creates a shower, he makes a shower. So he tries to do all the little things that were characteristic in his country, for the context, for the environment. And also when he rescues Friday, he doesn't let him live as he was, as he used to, but he tries to educate. He does his best to educate Friday. So he teaches him to read, to write, to pray, and to say yes, no, pardon, to call him sir, okay, he also teaches him religion, of course. So he considers this man as a savage. He's a savage, but he doesn't leave him in his, we can say, in his customs. He wants to change him. And he also says in the description, when he describes on his diary, he describes Friday, he also says that differently from many other savages, he was particularly good looking. Why? Because he was very similar. He resembled English people, okay? So it seems to underline that the only possibility to be nice, to be good looking, is to be similar to English people. Friday, on the other side, is, as you can see, is a savage, is superstitious, is good looking, as we said, but is also very submissive because he accepts to be educated by Robinson. He accepts his teachings, and he accepts to finally become an Englishman. So at the end of the novel, is also rescued, and he goes back to England together with Robinson. Okay, that's all for today. I hope I was clear. So thank you, and put a like.